When you indulge yourself into a hobby for long enough, eventually you start finding yourself diving into different subsections of that hobby, the more niche parts that are not so commonly seen. And the main subsection I'm going to be talking about today is one that I found myself diving into headfirst with no regrets, and that is the world of promotional items for video games. Things like employee shirts, promotional hats, kiosks, standees, signs, and so much more. And the thing about promotional items is that these items were never meant to last. A lot of times, they were meant to be disposed of immediately after the promotion was done, or companies like Nintendo would want them destroyed. So, why kiosks? Well, a lot of times for me, and I'm sure for a lot of you guys out there, you have fond memories of going to the store and seeing these giant advertisements kind of reaching out to you to gather interest in an upcoming title or a title that's already been released. I know myself in particular, I remember playing on a PlayStation 2 kiosk like the one I have behind me there forever while my mom would shop at Target. And it's little things like that that kind of just, bring back the reason why I think a lot of us are in this hobby, which is to remind us of like simpler times in our life before life got so hectic with bills and everything else. But I want to also establish the importance of saving these items as a historical significance of them. As I said, these weren't meant to last, and thankfully there's tons of collectors online that feel the same way, that do their part in preserving pieces of video game history. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's go ahead and dive right into the topic. Now, I think a good starting point, if you yourself wanted to dive in a little bit into promo items, I think a good starting point for any collector would be hats. So for example, right here I have a hat for the Sega CD. This was probably from around 1992. It's got a patch on the back that says "Welcome to the Next Level." But hats are fairly cheap most of the time. You can find promo hats. Often these were given away for free at events like launch events, or sometimes Sega would do a promotional thing where they go on tour and they give them out if you got a high score. Here's another hat, for example. This one I actually wear all the time. This is a promo hat for the Neo Geo Pocket. I believe from the information I got from this one, this was given out at a convention that SNK was at, showing off the wonderful handheld. But generally, you can find promo hats like this for under $120 most of the time. So if you wanted to dive in and start with promo, this wouldn't be too bad of a start. Now, besides hats, there are other avenues like vintage t-shirts, though the price of vintage clothing has really skyrocketed over the years. So you can still find fairly good deals depending on the subject matter and the game that you're looking for. I've seen some shirts for promo shirts for Gears of War, for example, go for as low as $20, while others for the Super Nintendo are going to cost you a bigger chunk of change. It all depends on how passionate you are for that game series, and that's my recommendation with promo items. Go for the stuff that really means something to you, because it's fairly easy to kind of snowball in this part of the hobby and buy something that you're really not that passionate about as far as a promotional item goes. But like me, for example, I own a lot of Kirby things, but I'll go ahead and show you some of them now. So for example, one of my pride and joys of my promotional displays, I have this original Kirby Superstar Mobile from the Super Nintendo era that is double-sided. And this is a really standout piece for me. I love Kirby, as I said, and being a Kirby fan, this is like a great showcase item to have, and it looks really cool. And while we're on the topic, you can kind of see I have a lot of promotional stuff hanging from my ceiling. And that's another thing I like about this side of the hobby, is that it's very unique to decorate your game room with in many ways. It's also notable to say I have the 64 version of this mobile as well. Unfortunately, I'm missing the cardboard piece on top, but I do have the plushie still. So I'm hoping maybe I can track that down someday, considering I love Kirby 64 and have fond memories of playing it as a child. Over here, for example, I have a nice countertop standee of Kirby from the game Planet Robobot on the 3DS. And look how awesome that artwork looks when it's popping out. But as you can tell, I'm a big Kirby fan, so I have a lot of Kirby things.
And you know, I like Sega games. So I have like Nights in the Dreams, for example, up top there. Speaking of Sega cool subject matter, this is a fascinating one. This is a countertop standee for the Sega Dreamcast, advertising both Sonic Shuffle and Skies of Arcadia. But that was the very first standee I ever bought. And at the time, I was thinking to myself it was going to be a good purchase, but Skies of Arcadia is one of my favorite games of all time. And to have something that was not even meant to last and be thrown away seemed like a really cool thing to have in my collection.
So as you saw, you can kind of see some of my interest. I love Kirby, so I have a lot of Kirby promotional items. And I also love Sega as a company and SNK, Neo Geo, so I have a lot of stuff from them as well for their company. But we're going to start diving more into the bigger items and the cons that come with them. We're going to start showing off things like retail signs, like the big signs that would go on top of cabinets or would hang in store windows, as well as kiosks. And I'm going to give you some of the pros and cons of owning these items in your collection. So let me go ahead and show you the items I have first, and then we'll sit back down here and talk about the pros and cons. Let's go ahead and I'll show you my PlayStation sign here in the background first.
So when I'm talking about signs, I'm not talking about little things like these GameCube era cutouts of Star Fox or Pikmin, or I guess even a clock can kind of be considered an advertising sign, like this one for the Game Boy Advance, or maybe a Japanese like flag like you would see for Sega Saturn. Those are fairly small and don't really take up a lot of space. But stuff like this, for example. So this is a PlayStation 1 era sign. It does light up. I'll go ahead and turn it on for you guys real quick. It does light up, and you can kind of see this was made to be sitting on top of a PlayStation 1 retail cabinet. So you can see there's a little indents on the bottom, these little circular things that would light up the glass cabinet itself when it was in there. And this guy is huge. As you can see, it's like sticking. It takes up almost 2 shelves. And the way I have it balanced is to make it a little bit more symmetrical, but it sticks out a fair bit. And this sign is decently heavy. It weighs about, if I had to give a guesstimate, probably 130 pounds. So it's not a light sign whatsoever. It does use a fluorescent bulb. So if you were curious about the upkeep of this, a fluorescent bulb's not too expensive. I think I found one at Home Depot for maybe, I don't know, 22 bucks or something, but these are the kind of things I'm talking about. So signs take up a lot of space and they can get very costly. Like I would love to personally have a Sega sign, but Sega signs are upwards of $1,000 plus. This sign in particular, I've seen go anywhere from about $600 to $900. Now, I got this for a fairly decent deal from a local collector out here, and that I felt pretty happy with and proud of. But a lot of times when you come to items like these, you basically have to ask yourself how much of it is actually worth it. A lot of times, you only get a chance to buy a sign like this maybe once a year. And so that's kind of where I was at. I have a lot of memories with the PlayStation 2 in particular, so I decided this would be great in my game room. And eventually, maybe one day I'll find the actual retail cabinet it goes with and I can complete it. But just a little heads up that if you're gonna get a sign like this, make sure you have the room to support it. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room here, the PlayStation 2 kiosk. Now, if you thought signs take up a lot of space, kiosks take up an exceptional amount of space. Now, lucky for me, the PlayStation 2 kiosk is a fairly slim kiosk in general where you can fit it in a pretty small game room. I mean, it's that nice. Now, kiosks are hard to obtain. Like I said in the beginning of the video, these were not meant to be in collectors' hands. They were meant to be destroyed or returned back to the company that originally sent them out. So, a lot of times, it's up to collectors just getting lucky and keeping them around and preserving them. Now, the story behind how I got this kiosk was I was actually buying a different kiosk locally. I was buying an Xbox One kiosk, and the guy happened to have a PlayStation 2 kiosk in his storage unit as well, and he just wanted to get rid of it. That's the truth. He was trying to clean out his storage unit. He didn't care, and he happened to give me this one for free. Now, there was a catch. It was non-functional, so it needed a lot of work. Like, it didn't have this topper. It was the controller arms, the original plastic on these things are so brittle that it broke. So I had to make new ones. The console itself was having some issues. I had to fix that. Not to mention, it was covered in about 5 years of dust and grime sitting in an outside storage unit. So I had to put work into it. But that's also a positive thing because kiosks are expensive. You know, if you wanted to buy a kiosk right now, a PlayStation 2 kiosk, that was already complete and fully working like this, even the condition with the browning vinyl stickers, you would still end up paying between $1,500 to $1,800, which is a lot of money. But if you buy a broken one, or one that's not entirely functional, it's missing pieces, you'll get a better deal. Like, I've seen these kiosks go for as low as $800 to $900 if it's missing the console, the controller parts, if it's missing the artwork that goes right here. You can get that for a lot cheaper, and not only that, but it kind of gives you a better intuitive direction for diving into the kiosk hobby itself, because it teaches you a lot. It teaches you, you know, how to fix stuff. It teaches you to learn more about the history of the piece and wanting to get the items to fully complete it. It's like a sense of adventure, you know what I mean? Like, I am a full set collector, you know, so I collected the full set of Sega Dreamcast games, which I'll do a video about in the future. But it gives you a sense of accomplishment. Like, every time I look at this kiosk, I think of all the time and energy that I spent getting this thing back to working order, and I didn't do it by myself, you know? And that's another thing I want to mention. It's not as strict as like classic cars. You don't have to get all original parts if you don't want to. Like my controller arms, for example, the plastic was terrible on these in the original ones. I got these ones 3D printed from a buddy of mine. They look fantastic. This acrylic topper, I couldn't find an original one. And the last time I did find one, the guy wanted like $900 just for the topper. So I got this one custom made. So there's plenty of options out there to complete your kiosk without breaking the bank. So that's another outlet. If you were scared to get into the kiosk side of the hobby because of the price, which I don't blame you, that's another avenue. You don't have to use original parts. You can still have an amazing looking piece without breaking the bank. So now we're in my downstairs living room. Before we were filming upstairs, but I'm gonna show you like a few more signs that I own, as well as one more kiosk to kind of give you a grasp of like how much room these things actually take up. So let's go ahead and start off with a different form of a sign, the banner. So up top here, I have an original launch banner for the Sega Dreamcast. Now I have pretty high ceilings in my living room, so it doesn't really feel that big. But this is a fairly large banner. And you know, this is like another subset that it can get pretty expensive pretty quick depending on the subject matter. So like this Dreamcast banner, for example, for the launch of the console, it's all over the place. Sometimes I see it for, you know, 400, other times I see it as high as 700. It just depends on the condition and the seller and auction itself. But that's something that is fairly more, less space taking, I should say, than would be the next sign I'm going to show you. So as I said, the banner doesn't take up as much room as the next sign I'm going to show you. And that sign is this original Nintendo double-sided sign. Now this would normally hang either in the storefront window or possibly in the middle of the store. But this thing is huge. Like, here's my hand for scale, but it's a fairly large and long sign that's double-sided. But yeah, like I said, if I didn't have a big living room with super high ceilings, this would take up a lot of space. Like for a lot of collectors, this would be one, whole top of a wall in their game room. But as I said, there are different levels to these types of signs. This is probably one of the cheapest Nintendo ones you could probably get. They make a variant version that has a World of Nintendo seal in the middle that goes for way more than this one. But this would be a good starter sign if you wanted to get into a big Nintendo sign like this one. This was, I think the product code is M17A. This one goes from about 600 to 900, once again, just depending on condition. Like mine has a lot of scratches on it, but because of that, I got it for an amazing deal. So if you don't care too much about the condition as a stickler, because honestly, when I step far back, I don't really even notice the scratches. So if that kind of thing doesn't bother you, then that's a good option if you wanted to get a Nintendo sign. Little side note, if you didn't want to shell out for a plastic sign, there are these bigger versions of hanging cardboard standees, like this Astrobot one, for example, that came from GameStop, where it's still a big scale, but it's not going to break the bank as much. And if you were wondering what that meowing was in the background, that is my calico cat Mochi, aka the guardian of the game room, who doesn't want to be on camera. Is that right? So now I'm going to show off my other form of a kiosk, which is store display cabinets. This is often called by friends of mine on the internet one of the most impressive pieces that I own. But basically what this is a Switch Nintendo cabinet that they used at Walmart. And they have a lot of versions of these. There's a PlayStation one that's blue as well as an Xbox one that's green. But it has like a really weird like trapezoid shape. And you can see mine's got a lot of beat up marks on it. But this is another subsection of the display hobby that takes up a lot of space. I mean, I have it on one of those Calyx shelves right now, and it's pretty big. I mean, it takes up a lot of room, but it is really cool. Now, the bigger World of Nintendo stand-up glass cabinets, those go for thousands of dollars. This one in particular, once again, depending on condition, you can get this cabinet, between, $900 to $1,200 if you're into that kind of thing. And when I got this one, it was missing a lot of pieces. Like there's originally supposed to be a sign right here that displayed the Joy-Cons, and there were, locks and price stickers and stuff. But I decided to get little pieces here and there to make it feel more complete. Like I got these Paper Mario standees. Like this is a countertop standee that is the perfect dimension to fit in the cabinet, as well as I have another one here to complement it. This metal piece wasn't originally part of the cabinet. These were like basically shelf placeholders. So they would, if they ran out of a Nintendo product on the store shelf, they would put that in place as a way to tell the customer like, hey, we're out of this right now, but we'll have more later. But this cabinet in particular weighs at least a good 200 pounds. It is heavy. I mean, it is solid metal, not to mention the electronics that are in it. So if you're gonna get one of these, not only do you need the space, but you need to have a buddy help you bring it in. But this is another cool thing, another cool subsection. If you really want to display your collection in a magical way, kiosks are a great way to do that. Like this is, a combination of both me and my partner's entire Switch collection. I mean, she owns way more Switch games than me, but it just looks good. It's a good way to, show your love for a console to get into these cabinets. Now, you don't have to put Switch games in them. You could have put whatever you want in them. I mean, this was originally meant for controllers. So in a way, you could have used that to display your favorite Switch Pro controllers, or you can put your box Game Boy games or whatever you want. The sky's the limit because there's really no big Switch branding. It's just a standard red Nintendo cabinet. Now, while I'm here, here's another display item you can possibly get into. They have these little promotional statues. Now they go anywhere from this small one here to the really big, tall ones that cost a ton of money. But this Mario one in particular I got was originally used during the Famicom era in Japan. So this would have like a little gold base, and they'd put them on Famicom approved Nintendo stores. So That's another cool thing you can have if you don't want something that takes up a lot of space, and it looks really, really dope. So that's another fun thing. When you get these display items, decorate it how you want to make it unique to you in your collection. One more cool promo thing just to show off, just because I'm already down here before we go back upstairs. They make little mini ones. There's promotional plush, like this Conquer Live and Reloaded plush. It originally came on a big cardboard tank like this, but you don't have to get one of those. The tank makes it more pricey, but if you just wanted a promotional plush like Conquer here, it would only run you about $100, and it's a very cool piece of history to have on your shelf. So the world of video game promo doesn't always have to cost thousands of dollars.
So that's just like some of the big items that I own in my collection and my diving journey into promo. And I think the most important thing I have to stress is that a lot of these items I waited on. I would save for months, or I'd wait until the perfect opportunity to get one. A lot of times, some of them, I was just in the right place at the right time. Like that Nintendo Switch cabinet you saw down there, I found that by a strange chance on OfferUp of somebody who just put it up for $100 that had no seller history, no rating whatsoever. So in my head, it was really sketchy, but thankfully it ended up paying off and I got a really cool piece of Nintendo history. But like my PS2 kiosk, I had to put a lot of work into it to get it, nice and presentable like you saw on camera. So, pros and cons. I did discuss some of them while talking about the pieces that I decided to showcase to you guys. But yeah, some pros to getting into this subsection of the hobby. It's a very unique and engrossive experience to get into this, because a lot of times the only way you're gonna find this stuff is by engaging with other collectors that have it already. And it kind of gets you more into the hobby community than you would in the standard normal hobby of just collecting and buying games. So, I met a lot of great people and I've gotten so much information. There's I can't believe the amount of cool stuff that's out there that I never even knew existed. Or, there's only certain pictures we have of this item, and the only reason why we know it exists is because this collector decided to post a picture of it online. So, that's another pro about it. If you want something unique that not everybody's gonna have in every collection. Like, I own a copy of Rule of Rose, right? There are tons of collectors that have Rule of Rose. It's not really that crazy of a thing to see in person. But not a lot of collectors have, a Kirby Superstar mobile display, or not a lot of collectors have a retail PlayStation sign. So, in a way, I guess for me, I like that it makes my collection stand out a little bit more. But it doesn't always have to be about that. Like I said, if you're a history buff and you want to preserve stuff and you just like having really interesting, unique items, this is a good part of the hobby to have. Now, as I was saying, some of the cons, we talked about space, how big some of these items are. Like, if you don't have a big room, buying 2 signs, it's going to take up almost your whole game room. So, it's basically a balancing act of if I can incorporate this item in, perfectly with the stuff that I already own. And so, as I said before with pros, make sure it's something that you're passionate about, that you really enjoy, that you're excited to own and talk about. Don't just buy, don't just get a promo item just because it's cheap and it's like, oh, it's cardboard, I gotta have it. But also with the cons is how expensive it could be. But like I said, if you wait for the right deal, if you're patient enough, that item you always wanted will eventually pop up for a good price and you can get your hands on it. But also don't be afraid to put the work in yourself to restore these items if you need to. Because a lot of times that's how you have to do it. Otherwise, you're basically going to be saving up the entire year to hopefully get the chance to buy one of these pieces. But I hope I introduced you guys to an exciting world that, I think more collectors should probably try to sink their teeth into, or at least look up more into it. And if you have a chance to, try to save some of the more modern ones. I know a lot of people go to their GameStops or Targets or Best Buys, and they'll simply ask the managers there, like, hey, when you're done with that, that promotional item for Mario Kart, if nobody has claimed it yet, or if you're just going to throw it away, I'd like to ask if it'd be okay if I could pick it up and have it. And I know a lot of people that have success with that. I've never had success with that at any of my GameStops because there's already employees taking them home, or there's already somebody that put their dibs on it before it was even set up in the retail space. But that wouldn't be a bad avenue. If you also wanted to get into this, I'd recommend trying to get into the specialized hobby groups for this. Now, I know a lot of people out there don't have Facebook, and I'm probably gonna sound really old saying this, but Facebook is a great avenue for video game collecting groups. I'd recommend making one just to get into those groups, because that's where I get a lot of my information from. There are kiosk display groups specializing in this kind of thing, and the community in there are some of the nicest people around, and they're always willing to help you evaluate something, get more information on something. You know, if you wanted to buy a sign but you're worried about the authenticity, these are the experts you want to contact. And it will introduce you to so many different avenues and connections that you can use later on. You'd be surprised. The retro gaming community is a rather small world, smaller than you think it is. So chances are you're gonna run into somebody that knows somebody you already know, a friend of yours, and you can always call on that person later on for more information. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Did I bring an interest to you for the world of video game displays? Do you think I'm crazy for spending money on these? Let me know down in the comments. What do you think? And if you did want to get into it, what's a promo item for a game or console that you would love to have someday? But thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll catch everybody later.